Chapter 26. Aftermath.
The word fell from Kaelan's lips like a stone cast into still water.
Yes.
I heard it through the darkness that had claimed me. Consciousness that should have scattered like morning mist, suddenly anchored by a syllable that rewrote cosmic law. The single word carried weight beyond its simple meaning. Surrender and salvation compressed into two letters that would reshape existence according to designs neither of us had chosen. Divine light erupted around us. Not the harsh brilliance of the Seraph's initial manifestation, but something that felt almost gentle despite its terrible power. Radiance that existed in dimensions adjacent to physical space flooded through the spaces between atoms. It rewrote cellular structure with precision beyond mere healing. The pain that had defined my final moments transformed into something beyond mortal comprehension. Not absence of suffering, but transmutation of it into raw material for divine reconstruction. The ambrosia flowed through my veins like liquid starlight given purpose. I felt it happening at the molecular level. Bones that had been shattered by Theron's lightning knitted with audible clicks that resonated through dimensions beyond the merely physical. Flesh sealed over wounds that had leaked life onto obsidian stone. Divine energy weaving new tissue from templates that existed in cosmic bureaucracy's perfect records. My heart, which had been stuttering toward final cessation, suddenly surged with strength that belonged to no mortal rhythm. But the changes ran deeper than healing. Power flooded through pathways that had never carried such force. Neural networks expanded, consciousness spreading into spaces that human brains weren't designed to occupy. I could feel reality bending around my transforming form, responding to a presence that carried weight beyond simple mass. The apple of Eden's temporary enhancement had been a candle compared to this bonfire. Divine essence not borrowed but inherent, woven into every cell through systematic application of refined consciousness. My eyes opened. The obsidian plateau spread before me in detail that made previous perception seem like blindness. I could see the individual crystalline structures in volcanic glass. Track the way starlight refracted through atmospheric particles with mathematical precision. Perceive threads of energy connecting everything to everything else in complex patterns. The underlying unity beneath apparent chaos. The pack's amber eyes blazed like captured fire. Each member's unique essence visible as colored auras that shifted with emotional states. And Kaelan. His scarred features held anguish beyond divine nature's usual control. Amber eyes that had witnessed 5 centuries of violence now reflected something closer to terror as he watched my transformation complete itself according to Seraph mandate. His massive hands still cradled me, but I could feel the trembling and divine strength that had torn Stormlords in half without visible effort.
Vera.
His voice carried frequencies I'd never perceived before, layers of meaning operating on consciousness itself.
Is it still you?
The question held weight beyond simple identity verification. He was asking whether the woman who'd stolen from divine groves to save dying children still existed inside flesh that now carried its own luminescence. Whether the stubborn idealism that had chosen death over servitude had survived transformation into exactly what she'd rejected. I sat up with fluid grace that belonged to no mortal movement. My body responded to intention before conscious thought could complete neural pathways. Divine enhancement making every gesture carry the weight of perfect coordination refined across cosmic ages. The armor that had been fused to skin by electrical discharge simply wasn't anymore. Clean flesh gleamed beneath mountain starlight, unmarked except for patterns that seemed to write themselves across my skin in script that hurt to read directly. I'm here. The words emerged with harmonics I didn't intend, my voice carrying undertones that made the pack flinch despite their alpha's proximity. I'm still me, I think. But was I? My reflection in Kaelan's amber eyes showed transformation beyond mortal beauty. Skin that caught light like polished marble. Hair that moved with its own ethereal wind despite mountain air hanging still around us. features refined beyond human perfection yet somehow still recognizably mine. The stubborn chin that had gotten me into trouble my entire life. The eyes that had learned to see patterns in botanical chaos. The mouth that had never learned when silence served better than defiance. Just more, enhanced, divine. Exactly what I'd rejected moments before consciousness fled toward cessation.
As foretold, as predicted, as known across all temporal streams.
The Seraph's voice descended like judgment made manifest. Its manifold eyes tracking us with attention that felt like standing beneath falling stars. The six-winged messenger hadn't departed. Merely withdrawn to observe transformation it had orchestrated through careful manipulation, spanning timescales beyond mortal comprehension.
The bargain is sealed, the debt acknowledged. The work shall commence according to parameters established through cosmic necessity rather than individual preference.
Crystalline tablets materialized in the space between dimensions, their surfaces inscribed with mandates that seemed to write themselves as cosmic, will solidified into divine law. I could read them now, not just the surface text, but the underlying meaning. The implications layered beneath simple directive like geological strata compressed across ages. Our new purpose blazed forth in script that burned itself into consciousness. Complete the Apple project under Seraph guidance and oversight. Develop alternatives to current ambrosia distribution systems. Ensure botanical breakthroughs remain controlled by appropriate cosmic authorities. Submit quarterly progress reports through designated channels. Accept periodic inspection from host of heaven representatives. Freedom had become mandate. Rebellion transformed into sanctioned research. Everything Kaelan had fought for across 4 centuries reduced to bureaucratic compliance wrapped in false permission. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. My new voice carrying across the plateau with force that made volcanic stone ring in sympathetic response. Why go to such elaborate lengths? The manipulation, the plague, orchestrating every step toward this moment. Why? The Seraph's manifold eyes turned toward me with attention that would have crushed mortal consciousness. But I was something else now. Divine flesh animated by cosmic mandate. Awareness expanded to perceive patterns and chaos that human minds dismissed as random noise.
To preserve vital essence for the host of heaven while maintaining proper order among gods and mortals.
The words pressed against my consciousness with the weight of absolute truth. Not cruelty for its own sake, but cosmic accounting that treated consciousness as a renewable resource in equations balanced by powers beyond my ability to fully comprehend, even with divine enhancement.
The current system wastes resources through inefficiency. Mortal populations breed consciousness, yes, but harvesting methods destroy potential that might be cultivated toward more productive purposes. Your hybrid specimens offer optimization.
Understanding crystallized with terrible clarity. They didn't want to end the ambrosia trade. They wanted to perfect it. Golden apples that could grant temporary divine power without requiring systematic processing of human awareness. Grown in controlled environments under cosmic oversight. The host of heaven would maintain their hold over divine servitude while appearing to show mercy toward mortal populations. You want us to build a more efficient cage. My voice carried bitter understanding. Make the chains comfortable enough that no one questions why they're wearing them.
We prefer the term sustainable governance structure, but your crude metaphor approaches accurate assessment.
The Seraph's tone held something that might have been approval in beings capable of such emotion. Its 6 wings beat once against existence itself, dimensional barriers flexing beneath cosmic authority.
The mandate is clear. The resources allocated, the timeline established through bureaucratic necessity. You have 7 years to produce viable specimens capable of sustaining divine power without ambrosia dependency. Failure carries consequences spanning multiple dimensions.
7 years. The number hung in air that suddenly tasted of copper and prophecy. Not freedom, but deadline. Research transformed into obligation with cosmic punishment for insufficient progress. The crystalline tablets dissolved like morning mist. their contents already seared into consciousness through channels beyond normal memory. Every specification, every requirement, every parameter established by powers who viewed individual agency as an acceptable loss balanced against systemic stability.
Do not mistake our investment for mercy. You exist now to serve purposes larger than personal preference or romantic attachment. The work shall proceed according to established protocols, or the host of heaven shall demonstrate why compliance proves wiser than continued defiance.
Then the Seraph was gone, dissolving into ash that scattered on winds obeying different physical laws. But its mandate remained, pressing against consciousness like a gathering avalanche waiting to claim everything beneath its weight. Silence settled over the obsidian plateau like a burial shroud. Kaelan's amber eyes met mine across the space between us, no longer measured in fundamental difference between mortal and divine, but in the terrible understanding of what his choice had cost. He'd saved my life by surrendering everything I'd fought to preserve, had chosen love over principle, my survival over the freedom his research represented. The pack remained frozen in their protective circle, amber eyes reflecting firelight and something approaching uncertainty about their alpha's decision. Grimjaw's massive frame trembled despite her wounds. Ironback's scarred hide bore fresh marks from a battle that had claimed higher stakes than simple victory. Even Swiftclaw's usually confident posture carried hesitation, born from witnessing a choice that prioritized individual attachment over pack unity. You shouldn't have. The words emerged flat, stripped of the fury they deserved. I made my choice. You should have honored it.
I couldn't.
His voice broke on the admission, divine control failing beneath emotions he'd spent centuries trying to suppress.
500 years of violence, and I finally found something beyond pack loyalty and berserker rage. Found you. And you wanted me to just let you die? Let consciousness scatter like morning mist when I had the power to prevent it?
He stood with fluid grace that carried 5 centuries of accumulated experience. Divine power making reality bend subtly around his massive frame. But his scarred features held grief despite my breathing. Anguish beyond the physical miracle of continued existence.
I love you.
He continued, the words rough against a throat that had torn Stormlords apart hours before.
And love makes cowards of us all. Makes us betray our principles, surrender our rebellions, trade everything we fought for in exchange for one more tomorrow with someone who carved space in places we thought long dead to emotional attachment.
The brutal honesty in his tone made something in my newly divine chest ache with pain beyond physical trauma. He knew what he'd done. Understood the betrayal implicit in saving me against my expressed wishes, in choosing my survival over the freedom his research represented. But he'd done it anyway, because love, real, terrible, utterly human love despite our divine nature, didn't care about principles or cosmic politics or the weight of choices that would reshape existence. It just wanted one more heartbeat, one more breath, one more moment before darkness claimed what it couldn't bear to lose. I hate you for this. The words emerged without heat, exhaustion making honesty easier than elaborate anger, for taking my choice, for making me complicit in exactly what I rejected, for proving the Seraph right about sentiment costing more than we can afford to pay.
I know.
He moved closer with careful deliberation, divine strength held rigidly in check.
And I'll spend whatever eternity cosmic mandate grants us trying to make amends for stealing your death. But I'd do it again. We'll do it again. Every time. In every timeline where the choice presents itself.
His massive hands reached toward me with surprising gentleness. Scarred fingers tracing patterns across features that now carried their own luminescence.
Because 5 centuries taught me that violence is easy. Watching someone I love die when I have the power to prevent it? That's the kind of weakness I can't survive.
The terrible irony settled between us like a stone cast into still water. He'd chosen strength disguised as weakness, surrender to cosmic authority wrapped in emotional vulnerability, had proven himself capable of the one thing 5 centuries of conquest hadn't prepared him for, admitting that something mattered more than principle. Around us, the pack began stirring from their frozen positions. Grimjaw approached with limping steps, her massive frame bearing witness to wounds that would take days to fully heal, despite lycanthrope resilience. When her elongated skull lowered until amber eyes met mine at equal height, something shifted in her expression, not the perpetual disdain or territorial possession that had marked our every interaction. Something closer to recognition. Respect earned through surviving what should have been unsurvivable. Through becoming something beyond the breeding stock she'd dismissed as temporary inconvenience.
You fought well.
The words emerged rough from a throat built for howling rather than human speech.
For mortal limitations, now you carry power beyond such constraints. Perhaps you will not disappoint as thoroughly as anticipated.
Coming from Grimjaw, the statement approached a blessing. Her massive form straightened before turning to join the rest of the pack, their amber eyes tracking us with attention of pack bonds recognizing a fundamental shift in hierarchy. I wasn't just their alpha's chosen mate anymore. I was something approaching equal. Divine power granting status that mortal flesh could never claim. The obsidian plateau stretched before us in the growing light of dawn that painted volcanic glass in shades of amber and gold. Theron's bisected form had already begun dissolving, divine essence bleeding back to whatever realm would rebuild his consciousness across centuries of patient recovery. The elemental armies that had threatened to overwhelm the pack were nothing but ash scattered across stone that had witnessed their dissolution. Victory, purchased through bargains that reduced rebellion to sanctioned compliance, freedom to comfortable servitude, choice to cosmic mandate that brooked no genuine defiance.
We should return to the sanctuary.
Kaelan's voice carried undertones of exhaustion beyond physical weariness.
The work begins tomorrow. Tonight.
He paused, amber eyes holding mine with intensity that made breathing difficult despite divine enhancement.
Tonight we try to find meaning in choices that cost everything we fought to preserve.
His wings spread wide. Massive spans of divine will made manifest, their feathers catching light in ways that hurt to perceive directly. When he gathered me against armor still bearing marks from berserker flames, I didn't resist. My body molded to his with the ease of complementary design, divine flesh recognizing kindred power despite the betrayal implicit in its creation. The pack formed up around us with practiced coordination, their movements of centuries spent guarding assets too valuable to lose to random predation. Grimjaw took point despite her wounds. Ironback anchored the rear guard with stoic determination. Swiftclaw ranged wide on our flanks, amber eyes scanning for threats that wouldn't dare approach this close to sanctuary. We rose into mountain air that tasted of ozone and impossible choices, leaving behind the obsidian plateau where cosmic games had played out according to scripts written before my consciousness knew how to form coherent thought. Below, volcanic stone bore witness to battles that had reshaped existence through violence both physical and bureaucratic. The flight back past in silence waited with understanding that words couldn't adequately address. Kaelan's arms held me with gentleness beyond divine strength. My newly enhanced perception tracked the way starlight refracted through atmosphere according to principles unknown to earthly physics. Everything felt different, sharper, more immediate, layered with meanings that human consciousness dismissed as irrelevant noise. I was divine now, immortal through systematic application of refined awareness, powerful through cosmic mandate that treated individual agency as an acceptable loss. The woman who'd stolen from gods to save dying children still existed somewhere inside this enhanced flesh. But she shared space with something else now. Something that perceived reality through filters designed by powers who viewed consciousness as a renewable resource. Mountain peaks drew closer with each wing beat, their crystalline formations catching dawnlight and patterns of geological patience spanning ages. The sanctuary's terraced gardens spread before us like promises written in living stone. Alien specimens swaying in otherworldly winds while dimensional rifts leaked atmospheres from distant worlds. But everything felt different now. Not rebellion disguised as research, but divine mandate encoded in botanical possibility. The Apple Project would proceed under watchful guidance toward conclusions already written in cosmic bureaucracy. Our collaborative passion transformed into sanctioned compliance with quarterly reporting requirements. Freedom had been traded for love, rebellion for salvation. Principle for the precious, terrible gift of tomorrow. Whether the bargain would prove worthwhile remained a question that only time and the fruits of our commanded labor would answer. But as Kaelan's wings carried us toward a sanctuary that no longer felt like refuge from cosmic authority, I understood one thing with crystalline clarity. Some prices were too high to pay, but we'd paid them anyway. And now we'd spend whatever eternity cosmic mandate granted us discovering whether love could survive the weight of choices that cost everything except each other.
Chapter 27. New Beginnings.
Morning mist clung to the greenhouse's crystalline walls like whispered secrets refusing to dissipate. I watched condensation trace patterns across transparent surfaces. Each droplet caught light from sources that operated according to principles unknown to earthly physics. The air hung thick with humidity drawn from dimensional rifts that leaked atmospheres from distant worlds. Desert heat mixing with Arctic cold, creating microclimates that supported specimens no single planet could sustain. My divine hands moved with precision that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. I prepared graphs that bridged genetic distances evolution never intended to cross. The dimensional scalpel hummed in my grip, its crystalline edge vibrating at frequencies that operated on cellular structures invisible to normal sight. Each cut revealed patterns I could now perceive, not just tissue and vascular systems, but the underlying energy matrices that made life possible across multiple realities. The protein synthesis is accelerating. The observation emerged soft against the greenhouse's ambient chorus. Chiming flowers, singing ferns, the subsonic rumble of dimensional barriers flexing beneath cosmic pressure. 3 weeks ahead of projected timeline, Kaelan's scarred fingers guided hybrid rootstock with surgical precision. Divine power flowing through his touch like liquid starlight given purpose. His amber eyes studied cellular development with attention of 4 centuries perfecting techniques that pushed boundaries of what gods thought possible. When he nodded acknowledgement of my assessment, something warm settled in my chest beyond mere professional satisfaction.
The dimensional resonance frequency stabilized overnight,
He said, his voice carrying undertones of wonder barely contained by divine control.
Your modification to the grafting angle solved the cellular rejection problem that's plagued this line for 40 years.
The perfect specimen grew in its specially prepared plot at the greenhouse's heart, silver bark gleaming with inner light of power unbound by seraph chains. Each day brought subtle changes that my enhanced perception tracked with growing fascination. Leaves that caught starlight differently than the previous morning. Flowers whose petals rang like distant bells when touched by mountain winds carrying scents of worlds I'd never visited. The apple that would theoretically free gods from ambrosia dependency was becoming reality through patience measured in heartbeats rather than centuries. Through collaborative passion that had somehow survived transformation from rebellion into cosmic mandate. I reached toward a developing bud with fingers that now carried their own luminescence. Divine flesh responding to living tissue through channels beyond simple touch. The specimen's energy matrix pulsed against my palm. Complex harmonics of genetic integration proceeding according to designs neither of us had originally conceived.
It recognizes you,
Kaelan observed, his massive frame moving close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from armor still bearing faint scars from Theron's lightning.
responds to your essence like it does to mine. That shouldn't be possible with grafts this young.
His proximity made the air between us feel charged with more than botanical miracle. Divine senses revealed nuances I'd never perceived as mortal. The way his breathing synchronized with mine when we worked together. How his power hummed at frequencies that harmonized with my own transformed nature. The careful strength in scarred hands that could reshape reality, yet touched specimens with infinite gentleness. Maybe it's responding to both of us. I suggested, not quite meeting his amber gaze. The collaborative energy. Two divine essences working toward shared purpose instead of competing for dominance. The words carried implications beyond simple botanical observation. Our work had found a rhythm beyond mere cooperation. Something that felt almost like the dance Vera Ashworth had described when talking about her partnership with my father. Movements anticipated before conscious thought. Understanding that passed through joined hands working soil that shouldn't support any earthly life. At reality's edge, the watchers maintained their vigil. I could feel them now. Manifold eyes tracking every gesture. Impossible geometries recording techniques that might reshape cosmic hierarchy. The Seraph's observers pressed against dimensional barriers with weight that made breathing difficult despite divine enhancement. Their presence carried the patient inevitability of powers whose attention span measured in geological ages, who viewed individual initiative as statistical noise in equations balanced across multiple realities.
They're closer today.
Kaelan's voice held grim acknowledgement of surveillance that never blinked, never wavered, never forgot.
The progress draws attention that complicates our timeline whether we want complications or not.
Our timeline. Not his research or my contributions, but something shared that cosmic authority found increasingly interesting despite, or perhaps because of, its origins in desperate theft and impossible choices. I returned to preparing grafts that would accelerate the perfect specimen's development. My hands moving with confidence born from weeks of practice beneath divine supervision. The hybrid rootstock welcomed my touch. Cellular structures responding to intention before physical contact completed neural pathways. Each successful union felt like a small victory against forces that preferred keeping gods dependent on resources they controlled through systematic harvesting of mortal consciousness. The cellular integration here shows promise, I murmured, studying tissue samples through crystalline instruments that revealed genetic structures in dimensions adjacent to normal space. If we can replicate this growth pattern across the mature specimens, we might achieve viable fruit within
6 weeks.
His scarred hand covered mine where it rested against the workbench. Divine strength transmitting through simple contact in ways that made my newly enhanced nervous system sing with recognition.
Maybe less if the accelerated protein synthesis continues at current rates.
6 weeks. The number hung between us like a blade suspended over everything we'd built through collaborative passion transformed into sanctioned compliance. Success would bring new mandates. Fresh chains forged from cosmic bureaucracy's endless hunger for control. The perfect specimen would indeed free gods from ambrosia dependency and bind them to something far more absolute. Neither of us mentioned the obvious. But in the space between words, understanding passed like current through joined hands. The Watchers recorded our progress, compiled reports for powers who viewed consciousness as a renewable resource. Success meant demonstrating that alternatives to the current system could be controlled by appropriate authorities. Failure meant what? Punishment spanning dimensions? Separation enforced through cosmic mandate? The Seraph hadn't specified consequences for insufficient progress, but their silence carried more threat than explicit ultimatums.
We should check the southern cultivation plots.
Kaelan said, his voice carefully neutral despite the way his thumb traced patterns against my palm.
The secondary specimens need monitoring before dimensional drift destabilizes their root systems.
The suggestion carried weight beyond practical necessity. Getting away from the greenhouse's concentrated surveillance, even briefly, finding spaces where the Watcher's attention might diffuse across distance and dimensional interference. I nodded, not trusting my voice to remain steady when his proximity made thinking about anything beyond his touch feel like wading through honey. Divine nature or not, some responses went beyond cosmic enhancement, remained stubbornly, wonderfully human, despite transformation that had rewritten every cell. We moved through the terraced gardens with synchronized grace of weeks spent navigating impossible terrain together. Stone pathways adjusted their configuration automatically to accommodate divine presence. The mountain's living architecture responding to power that walked its corridors with increasing familiarity. Around us, specimens from dozens of worlds swayed in otherworldly winds, their alien beauty both mesmerizing and somehow comforting in its careful cultivation. The southern plots spread before us like promises written in living stone. Hybrid saplings that represented years of patient observation compressed into weeks of accelerated development. Each specimen bore markers of our collaborative genius. Genetic combinations that shouldn't exist according to any law of natural selection, yet thrived beneath mountain sun that filtered through atmospheres drawn from multiple realities.
Grimjaw approached me this morning.
Kaelan's voice carried careful neutrality that made my divine senses sharpen with attention to what he wasn't saying.
She wants to speak with you formally.
The pack leader's name sent complex emotions cascading through consciousness, still adjusting to its expanded parameters. Our relationship had evolved from open hostility to grudging coexistence, but formal audience suggested something more significant than territorial posturing or demonstration of pack hierarchy. Should I be worried? The question emerged lighter than I felt. Divine enhancement unable to completely suppress the anxiety that Grimjaw still inspired despite my transformed nature. His scarred features held something approaching a smile, rare expression that made him look almost approachable, despite 7 feet of controlled violence wrapped in armor bearing marks from battles spanning centuries.
She's not challenging your position. If anything, it's the opposite.
Before I could process that cryptic statement, movement at the garden's edge announced the pack leader's arrival. Grimjaw appeared between dimensional folds with the silent grace that 8 feet of lanky predator somehow made look effortless. Her massive frame moved with careful deliberation, amber eyes assessing the botanical miracles surrounding us with calculating intelligence that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations across multiple worlds. When those eyes fixed on me, I saw something that made my divine heart skip beats it shouldn't miss. Respect. Real, unfeigned recognition beyond pack hierarchy or cosmic mandate.
Alpha.
She inclined her elongated skull toward Kaelan with a gesture of loyalty earned across lifetimes.
Little goddess.
The title emerged without mockery, without the casual dismissal that had marked our early encounters. I'd graduated from breeding stock to little mouse to this. Something approaching equal status within pack dynamics that operated according to principles spanning centuries of shared existence. Grimjaw. I kept my voice steady despite nervousness that divine nature couldn't quite suppress. Kaelan mentioned you wanted to speak with me? Her massive frame settled onto stone that had been shaped from living mountain. Amber eyes reflecting light from hybrid specimens that pulsed with contained power. When she spoke, her voice carried weight beyond simple pack communication. Formal pronouncement that would bind her to whatever came next.
You have proven worthy.
The words fell like stones into still water, each syllable carrying implications that rippled through everything I thought I understood about pack dynamics.
Of our Alpha's loyalty. Of the power you now wield. Of standing beside those who would reshape existence itself.
The formal acknowledgement struck deeper than any praise I'd received from settlement councils or divine authorities. Pack acceptance went beyond mere tolerance. It was a bond forged through shared danger. Trust earned through actions rather than mandates imposed by powers operating beyond individual choice.
The morning patrol reports unusual activity near the southern passes.
She continued, her tone shifting to practical matters that demanded immediate attention.
Seraph observers, but different from the usual watchers. Older, more dangerous.
Kaelan's posture shifted subtly. Divine power gathering around his frame like storm clouds pregnant with lightning.
How many confirmed?
7 that we can track. Possibly more hidden in dimensional folds that obscure our sight, despite centuries learning to hunt across multiple realities.
Her expression darkened with memories of previous encounters that hadn't ended well for those who drew excessive cosmic attention.
They watch but do not approach, yet.
The qualification carried the weight of experience with powers whose patience measured in geological rather than mortal time. The Seraph's observers had been content to record from reality's edge. But these older authorities apparently required closer proximity to whatever drew their interest. Through greenhouse walls behind us, the perfect specimen caught morning light and held it. Silver bark pulsing with a rhythm that matched my divine heartbeat. Success felt close enough to taste. Weeks rather than months before fruit ripened that could theoretically end cosmic dependency. But the Watchers multiplied with each breakthrough. Their presence of powers that would not easily surrender control over divine existence.
Show me.
Kaelan's command carried undertones that made the pack leader straighten with anticipation of coordinated action.
I want to assess the threat before determining appropriate response to cosmic surveillance that exceeds established parameters.
We moved through mountain passes with the pack flowing around us like liquid shadow given predatory purpose. Grimjaw led with confident grace of centuries spent guarding territories against threats operating beyond normal comprehension. Ironback anchored our formation with stoic determination, his scarred hide bearing witness to battles that had claimed higher stakes than simple survival. Even wounded Swiftclaw ranged wide on our flanks, amber eyes scanning for dangers that might approach through spaces between dimensions. The southern passes opened before us like a geological cathedral carved from stone that remembered the planet's formation. Wind howled through narrow defiles carrying scents of thermal vents and dimensional rifts, the air tasting of copper and prophecy. And there, pressed against reality's edge like moths drawn to flame, the Watchers maintained their patient vigil. 7 confirmed, just as Grimjaw had reported. But my divine sight revealed something the pack couldn't perceive. Patterns in their observation. Coordination of intelligence operating on levels that made normal Seraph surveillance seem almost casual. These weren't simple recorders documenting progress for quarterly reports. These were powers that predated current hierarchies, ancient authorities whose interest carried implications spanning cosmic ages. "They're not here to record our research," I whispered. Divine perception, tracking energy matrices that flowed between the observers in patterns too complex for conscious analysis. They're here because someone older than the Seraph wants to know why our collaboration produces results that shouldn't be possible through sanctioned compliance alone. Kaelan's amber eyes met mine across the space between us, and in that gaze I saw 5 centuries of accumulated experience, recognizing truth my enhanced nature had perceived. His hand found mine among the impossible terrain, scarred fingers intertwining with flesh that now carried its own luminescence. In that touch, rebellion passed between us. Unspoken defiance against forces that treated gods as tools and mortals as renewable resources. Understanding that our collaborative passion, born from desperate theft and impossible choices, had somehow gone beyond the chains meant to bind us. The perfect specimen would be completed, the mandate would be fulfilled. But in the depths of joined purpose, something else grew that the Watchers couldn't perceive despite their manifold eyes and impossible geometries. The seed of resistance disguised as compliance. Freedom hidden within the very chains designed to bind us. Love that had learned to wear the mask of duty while planning revolution from within paradise that looked more like a gilded cage with each passing day. At reality's edge, the ancient Watchers recorded everything with attention that made the air taste of ozone and gathering consequence, but they could not perceive the most dangerous element of all. 2 divine beings who'd learned that some chains, no matter how beautifully forged, could still be broken by those willing to pay freedom's price. Assuming they survived long enough to attempt the breaking, the morning mist began to lift, revealing gardens where impossible things grew toward fruition that would reshape existence according to designs we pretended to accept, while secretly planning alternatives that cosmic authority would never anticipate until too late. And in the space between heartbeats, beneath surveillance that never blinked, within mandate that seemed absolute, we began planning for the day when the Seraph would discover that perfect compliance could mask perfect rebellion. If we were clever enough, patient enough, willing to risk everything we'd gained for the possibility of something beyond comfortable servitude, wrapped in collaborative passion. The perfect specimen pulsed in its distant greenhouse plot, silver bark gleaming with promise that carried double meaning only we could perceive. Freedom, or its most dangerous counterfeit. Only time would reveal which we'd actually cultivated,